All right, so in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get things kicked off today. So, hi there. Thank you for joining us for today's financial training ground pop-up on making budgets work. I'm Jen, Certified Credit Union Financial Counselor, and this is Amy. We're part of the community engagement team here at Horizon Credit Union. Just some quick housekeeping notes before we get started. Everyone has been muted upon entry, and to ask any questions, go ahead and just use the chat. We'll be sure to get those answered. We will rely pretty heavily on the participant guide throughout the pop-up today, so I'll pop the link for that right now into the chat, and it can also be found in your event invite. All right, so many of us struggle with savings. Budgeting does not come naturally to everybody, and most people find that it's harder to do than it sounds. Budgeting is a skill, and planning and preparation are required on your part to make it work. In this pop-up, we'll show you how you can set your financial goals, live within your means, and create and stick to a budget. Let's go ahead and get started. So let's review the goals for today's pop-up. Today, we will determine your personal obstacles to budgeting, create a format to track and analyze your spending, list your short and long-term goals, discuss the importance of debt reduction and emergency savings, and how to apply strategies to manage your day-to-day spending. Budgeting is the process of creating a plan to spend your money. Budgeting can help you in these ways: to live within your means. When you budget your money, you create a clear picture of where your money is going. By using a budget, you can see where you might be spending too much in a certain area and change your habits moving forward. Budgeting can help you pay down debt. By reviewing your budget, you can set a plan to pay down your debt. A budget can help you to stay on track as you make payments and help you chart a path to get out of debt. And finally, budgeting helps you to save for the future and emergencies. It can help you to meet your financial goals sooner. Plus, budgeting can help in case you ever have an unexpected financial emergency, like a car breaking down or a surprise trip to the ER. If you budget for emergency savings, you won't have to put those extra expenses on a credit card. Let's take a quick poll. What are some obstacles to budgeting for you? Let me get that up here. So what are some obstacles to budgeting for you? Either A, it takes too much time, B, it's too complicated, or C, it's just too stressful. We'll give just a couple more seconds here, and then we'll wrap that up. All right, so it looks like most of you said that it takes too much time. So while all of these may feel true right now, the truth is once you start and have a system in place that works well for you, you'll likely find that all of these obstacles become much more surmountable. There are many reasons why people don't budget. Here are some common excuses that it's easy to make instead of budgeting. Do any of these apply to you? I don't want to think about the future. Well, it's coming either way. There's the it takes too much time. Well, in this case, think about how much time you spend stressing out and worrying about your finances. Or my income and spending is not consistent. That's a great one. Maybe you're seasonal or something like that. Work within your reality. Make changes and updates as needed. Or I can't keep up, so why even start? Just like anything in life, we'll falter. The trick is to keep moving forward. Progress is perfection. So understanding the challenges that prevent us from breaking a bad habit may help us to overcome them. In our next activity, we will set some financial goals to help motivate us with budgeting.
Thanks, Jen. Now that we've reflected on the obstacles and the challenges that we have that prevent us from sticking to a budget, let's get into why we're all here. You all want to get better at budgeting, but your motivations may differ. To really make a budget work for you, it's important to have financial goals to motivate you. Financial goals are personal goals you set for yourself about how you will save and spend money. These goals can be things you hope to achieve soon or things to achieve further down the road. Breaking these timeframes down can help. Short-term goals can be accomplished in a few months up to a few years. Examples include paying off a credit card or saving for vacation. Medium-term goals can be accomplished in 2 to 5 years. Examples would be buying a new car, making a down payment on a home, or paying off debt. And long-term goals can be accomplished in more than 5 years. Some examples are building a college savings fund and saving for retirement. Setting financial goals is a fun part of budgeting. In this next activity, you will think about your own personal goals. So now we're going to refer back to that participant guide, and I'll refer you to page 3 in that guide, and this is called the Setting Your Goals worksheet. For this activity, think about your personal goals, how much you'll need to save, and the time frame you'd like to accomplish each goal in. For example, first determine the amount you need to save for vacation and how many months you have to do it in. Try to think of at least 3 goals, short, medium, or long-term. I'll give you just a moment to fill out that page and see if you need more time to determine your goals. If you do, feel free to work on that at a later time. So I'll give you just a minute here just to think about your goals. If you don't have the participant guide open, you can use the worksheet on the screen as a guide, and you can write that on a piece of paper and put that in your workbook at a later time. So I'll give you just a second here to complete those goals. All right, in the interest of time, we are going to move on, but please feel free to refer back to that page in your workbook and complete that to continue building your budget. Now that we've gone through a little about your savings goals, we can start to dig in, discussing how to budget effectively. The first step is getting organized and tracking your expenses. Keeping your financial documents and information organized is an important part of your financial health. You need this information to create a budget, and keeping it organized will help you manage your finances more quickly in the future. You will need all of your sources of income, a record of your average monthly expenses. If possible, keep track of your expenses for at least 3 months so you will have an average amount spent in each category, and a list of your bills and your debts. Now we will work on organizing your finances. First, you'll need a complete list of your net income, the amount on your paycheck after taxes and other deductions. If you're self-employed or work odd jobs, this is your adjusted income after quarterly self-employment taxes are taken out. But wages may not be your only source of income. You may also receive bonuses, child support, or other sources of aid or income. We've included a table where you can list your income in your participant guide on page 3. List all of your sources of income in the left column and the amount for each on the right. If the amounts vary from month to month, try to determine an average for each source. Make sure you note all of your sources of income. And here again, we'll give you just a second. You may just have enough time to jot notes down, but make sure you come back to this and include all of those sources of income and the amounts of each. So I'll give you a second here. All right, hopefully you were at least able to gather your thoughts on that page in that section. But we'll keep moving on in the interest of time. So next, you'll need a record of your monthly expenses. This includes everything from housing to gas to entertainment expenses. Often you can find this info by looking through your bank statements, receipts, or online banking history. Or else there's always the good old-fashioned method of paper and pen. You'll get a more accurate picture of your average monthly spending if you track your expenses. We've included a space for you to track your expenses on page 4 in your guide. Horizon members can also utilize the money management tool available in online banking and the mobile app to track your expenses and check your spending. When you go through the expenses list, make note of each expense. Make note if each expense is considered a want, something you could live without, or a need, something you need to survive, like food or shelter to provide a source of income. The only debt that should be included in your expense tracker is your mortgage, if you have one. You'll record your other debts on the next worksheet on page 5. Once you've calculated your monthly debts, you'll apply that amount at the bottom of your expense tracker page. For now, spend some time listing what expenses you can before moving on. So we'll give you just a minute here again to make some notes of some of those expenses. All right, hopefully you got some good notes there. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next section where we'll record our debts. In this section, we ask for more information than just your debts and monthly payments. This is because knowing the APR, or annual percentage rate, and balance can help you create a strategy for paying off debts by taking into consideration the additional cost of interest on loans and other debts. For monthly payments, list what you usually pay each month for each debt. If the monthly payment on a debt varies, try and determine an average. Once you've listed all of your debts, add up the monthly payments and apply that figure to the debt section at the bottom of your expense tracker on page 4. And here again, we'll give you just a minute to make some notes of some of the debts that you need to list in this area. All right. Tracking your income, expenses, and debts is a great first step, but you can't stop there. In order to create an effective budget, you must analyze your spending. Once you've determined your total monthly income, your total debts, and your total monthly spending, you can calculate your discretionary income. Discretionary income is the amount left over after you deduct your expenses from your income. Figuring out your discretionary income shows you how much money you may be able to apply to your savings goals each month. Turn to page 5 in your participant guide and find the section titled Your Discretionary Income. To calculate your discretionary income, subtract your average monthly expenses, including debts recorded in the expense tracker, from your total income recorded in the sources of income section. I'll give you just a moment to do that. We may not have totals yet because we haven't had a lot of time to fill those out, but that's what the process that you would take. All right, that calculation should give you a general idea of your discretionary income. If you don't have an idea of what your discretionary income is, you can complete this information later. The number we get is what's left over each month, the amount you can put towards your savings goals. If you do have a general amount and you feel it's enough, do you feel it's enough to reach your savings goals? I think most of us would say that we want more, right? In order to get more, we need to take a more analytical look at how we're spending our income.
Thanks, Amy. Before we head on, let's watch a fun video featuring another Jen that briefly explains the idea behind the 50-30-20 budgeting rule.
Aw, man, I do not have the budget for new shoes right now.
Over budget, eh?
Yeah. Sorry.
Maybe I can help. I'm a card-carrying budget builder.
I keep trying to make a budget that works for me, but it all keeps falling apart.
Sounds like you need a new approach. Don't hesitate to start from scratch and try again. Begin by getting your basic proportions right.
Go on.
A solid, well-proportioned budget will give you increased security, flexibility, and efficiency when it comes to money. You won't end up constantly broke before payday or saddled with out-of-control debts. What do you know about 50-30-20?
Is that a new boy band or something?
I like you. Allow me to demonstrate. Bring them in. Take your total net income and create a budget to spend 50% on needs,
I'm essential.
30% on wants,
You know I'm the coolest one.
and put 20% into savings.
I've got your back.
You get it? Start with your needs. Factor in all the essentials like housing, insurance, clothing, transportation, cell phone, groceries, and utilities.
But what if my needs cost more than 50%?
If that's the case, you have three choices: finding cheaper options, looking for ways to earn more money, or sacrificing a bit from another category.
Hey, lousy needs.
Your wants are the most flexible category, but they can also be the hardest to wrangle. Wants include dining out, concerts, movies, fashion, electronics, travel, subscription services, and all other non-essential purchases.
Okay, I'll rein in my wants if my needs are too expensive. Cool.
You could also sacrifice wants to put more into savings. Hey, back off, pal.
Yeah.
Savings are extremely important, and not just for big long-term goals like buying a house or retiring. You can also save for short-term future expenses, like an annual payment or a needed computer upgrade. You should put some money aside for an emergency fund as well. Saving up ahead of time will help you keep your budget more manageable, so you don't have to resort to high-interest debt to cover unforeseen expenses.
Can I save less than 20%?
Sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do, but remember that your savings help with future needs, which aren't optional.
That's right. Ignoring me could come back to haunt you.
All right, I like this whole 50-30-20 thing, but my real problem is sticking to the game plan. How do I keep my budget from falling apart again?
That depends on you. Do you want total and complete control? Then go old school and make an itemized spreadsheet.
And if I want super easy?
Then let technology do it for you. There are some great online tools and apps out there that make budgeting a stamp, no matter which method you choose. Make sure you track your spending for 2 months to get a full picture of your spending habits. Then you can make adjustments to trim down your needs, maximize your wants, and stay on top of savings.
Nice. I can make it all work together instead of feeling like each expense is fighting for dominance.
Yeah, when your budget is well built, everything will fit nicely.
Awesome. I'll use the 50-30-20 rule as a framework and build myself a better budget this time.
Now you're talking. Go get them.
Whoops.
All right, let's pop back into our presentation here. All right. So has anyone heard of the 50-30-20 budgeting rule before now? Click the raise hand button if you have. All right, I'm seeing a couple of hands. That's awesome. So the 50-30-20 budget rule is a commonly quoted financial rule of thumb, just like they said in the video. The idea behind it is that you should split your expenses into 3 categories: needs, wants, and savings and debt. 50% should go towards the things that you need to live, such as rent, mortgage, grocery, utilities. 30% can be spent on things that you want, but don't necessarily need, such as eating out, shopping, and entertainment. And finally, 20% should be applied to savings and paying down your debts. Paying down your debts does not include the minimum monthly payments. Those are included in your needs with this rule because you need to pay at least the minimum payment so that you're not penalized. The 50-30-20 rule aims to be a flexible strategy to use to manage your budget. Are you able to follow the 50-30-20 rule? Let's take a look. Turn to page 6 of your participant guide and find the section titled the 50-30-20 budgeting rule. Record your monthly net income at the top, which you can get from that last section. Now calculate how much of this income you should be applying to each category based on the 50-30-20 rule. Record it in the boxes on the chart, and I'll give you just a moment to do that. All right, in the interest of time, we'll keep moving here. So now hopefully you have a general idea of a recommended budget, and you can figure out how close you are to sticking to that by analyzing your expenses. Go back to your expense tracker on page 4, where you initially labeled your expenses as wants or needs. Now we'll do a couple more calculations. On page 6 in your participant guide, locate the calculating percentage spent, needs and wants. Add up everything spent on your needs and your wants, then divide each of those 2 totals by your income. You can move the decimal point 2 spaces to the right or multiply that figure by 100 to get a percentage. Go ahead and do this now for both the needs and the wants totals that you have listed. I'll give you just a minute. All right, we're going to go ahead and keep moving. Again, I know we're not giving you a ton of time to do this, but please feel free to come back and fill out that participant guide fully once you have all your facts and figures and all of your calculations complete. So hopefully you now have an idea of how well you're following the 50-30-20 budgeting rule. So what do you do with this information? Well, if you're spending more than the recommended percentages in either category, you may need to rework how your funds are distributed. If you're spending too much on needs, consider options for downsizing. For example, maybe your rent is too high and for your current income, or perhaps you're spending a lot on costly foods each month. Sometimes cutting from the needs category can be difficult, but it's often things we think are needs may also actually be fulfilling some wants. So if you're spending too much on wants, maybe you're consuming too many afternoon lattes or taking too many weekend trips. Figuring out the spending habits that are preventing you from reaching your savings goals really is something only you can do. Also remember that this is just one strategy you can use to make your budget work for you. However, this is not a hard and fast rule. We all know that housing costs have increased dramatically. For example, or setting aside 20% of your savings goals may be too ambitious, or it may not be ambitious enough. Before we talk about even more strategies to help you cut costs and stick to your budget, let's discuss debts a little bit further. Paying off your debts can be an important step toward achieving your financial goals. When we discuss paying off your debt, we're focused on high interest debt like credit cards. Credit cards are usually the worst form of debt, but some other loans can also carry high interest rates. Credit card debt can be very costly. If you work to pay off your debts, you'll be able to apply what you used to spend each month on that payment to your savings goals now, or another debt instead. There are two recommended methods that you can use to repay debt: the avalanche method and the snowball method. With the avalanche method, you first focus on paying off the debts with the highest interest rates. So in the example on the slide, which debt would you pay off first using the avalanche method? I'll go ahead and launch a poll here so you guys can share your input. So A, the major credit card first, B, the retail credit card, C, the personal loan, or D, the student loan. All right, I'll give you just a couple more seconds, but it looks like we've come to a consensus here. Perfect. So that major credit card, yes, indeed. That has the highest interest rate, so that's what we're going to want to focus on first with the avalanche method. So now with the snowball method, you focus on paying off the debt with the smallest balance. So again, in the example on the slide, which debt would you pay off first using the snowball method? We'll launch another poll here. All right, looking good. I feel like you guys are understanding this, so excellent. And I think we can wrap it up at this point. We've got quite a few answers for that retail credit card, and that is definitely correct. Both methods do have advantages. For example, although you would save more in interest by using the avalanche method, research has shown that psychological factors can play a role in paying off debt. Paying off even a small balance can make you feel good about yourself and motivate you to continue paying down your debt. Whatever method you use, the important thing is to stick to your chosen strategy and pay down debts so you can begin freeing up more funds to put towards your savings goals. Speaking of savings goals, remember the savings goals or the setting your goals section on page 3 of your participant guide. Did you see that there was a pre-filled one to be sure to include? Emergency savings. Let's take a moment to discuss why it's such a top priority and the importance of creating an emergency fund. How many of you have ever experienced a financial emergency? Go ahead and raise your hand. I know I have. Yep, I'm definitely seeing quite a few hands there, so it looks like most of us. By that, I mean something that required a large sum of money, often in a short time frame. We likely all have, to varying degrees at one time or another. Emergencies happen. It's just a part of life. A report at Duke University predicted over half of all US households will experience at least one financial shock, averaging $2,000. Sometimes emergencies can be even more expensive. Let's think about a couple of questions to ourselves. What if you lost your job? What if your car breaks down on the way home? What if your furnace stops working right now in the middle of winter? Oh gosh. How would you cover these expenses? Many of us end up using credit cards. Using your credit cards to pay for an emergency could lead to a downward spiral of debt, because the more debt you accrue, the higher your monthly expenses and the less you can put towards savings goals. To protect yourself from this potential debt spiral, experts recommend maintaining an emergency savings that will cover at least 3 months of living expenses. This probably sounds like a significant amount, and it may even seem impossible at this point. What's most important is that you save something. Even $500 will help ease the burden in the event of an emergency. So let's go back to your goal sheet and fill in a number for your emergency savings. Turn to page 4 in your guide and look at your, so turn to page 4 in your guide and look at your average total monthly expenses. Decide based on that how many months you feel comfortable saving for and multiply that by your average total monthly expenses. Remember, some of these listed expenses are wants, and in the event of a long-term emergency, you'd probably cut some of these considerably. So your overall monthly expenses would likely be less. For this reason, you can decide to use only what you spend on needs for this calculation. Go ahead and put that figure in the second column next to build emergency savings in the setting your goals table on page 3. I'll give you just a second to do that. Again, you can always go back and change that later if you decided, I really think I can save 4 months or 6 months. I definitely urge you to move in that direction. So next, you'll need to decide on how long you think you will need in order to save this amount. Paying down your debts and creating an emergency savings fund is a great way to reduce your expenses so that you can free up funds for your savings goals. But there are many strategies that you can use to save money. Some involve changing your habits, and some involve changing your mindset. We'll talk about a few of those next.
Thank you, Jen. Before we discuss the first strategy, let's do a quick poll question. I want you to think about your spending habits. When freeing up funds, where do you think is the best place to look? Wants or needs? We'll launch that poll here for you. So again, when freeing up funds, where do you think is the best place to look? Wants or needs?
We've got wants in the lead and 25% with needs. So 75 to 25% there.
All right. Well, like we learned in the video, we definitely want to look into that wants column first when we want to free up money. Reducing your wants is an excellent way to free up funds, but the best way is one that many people don't even think about. When you really want to focus on freeing up funds, often the best place to look isn't your coffee bar habits. It's your bigger expenses, especially those in the needs category. Now we are going to do a reflection. Go through your expenses and really think about what you can do to free up some funds. Then list your expenses and the amounts you could cut in the table labeled Cutting Expenses on page 7 of your participant guide. I'll give you just a few minutes here to make some notes of some of those expenses and how much could be cut from those expenses. All right. So now that you've recorded where you think you can make some cuts in your expenses, next, we'll talk about some additional everyday strategies you can use to free up even more funds. The first place to look at is your reoccurring expenses. These are the policies you agree to and the contracts you sign and then often forget about. When you first got your car insurance, how many of you shopped around for the best coverage and rates? Of course, right? That's pretty standard practice. But when it comes to following up, even the most responsible of us can get a little unfocused. How many of you get new quotes every year? And how many of you have subscription services like those for shopping, gaming, music, or even meal delivery? And how many of you have or have had subscriptions that you may pay for that you don't use often enough to warrant the cost? If any of these situations sounds like yours, you're not alone. Once we have a subscription or policy, we have a tendency to become complacent and just stick with it because that's what we've been doing. The next place to look at more closely is your costly purchases. Cars, homes, televisions. How many of you shop around when buying larger items? Right? Most of us do. The problem here isn't shopping for the best deal. Not really. It's in making the right decision. Some experts claim that Americans are serial overspenders, often spending more than we can truly afford, especially for bigger ticket items. We buy too much house, or we get the latest version of our cell phone, even though our old one works just fine. It's important to reward ourselves, but we also need to realize when we're giving into present bias, allowing short-term rewards to take precedence over more important long-term goals. Here are some other tips you can use when shopping to free up funds. Use coupons. Look for websites devoted to coupons to find deals for products you already purchase. Shop the clearance aisle. Sometimes clearance products are just off season, or they might have a small packaging defect. If you can find something in the clearance aisle that you would normally purchase anyway, and it's marked down 50 or even 75%, it's worth checking out. Use markdown sites. The same goes for discount or clearance websites. Often the same products offered on retail sites are offered at discount sites for much less. And buying in bulk. Another strategy is purchasing items in bulk. When you buy this way, you pay more upfront, but the cost of a single item is much less than if you purchase them one at a time. And get it when it's hot. The last tip requires a change in your purchasing mindset. Most of us buy things when we need them. Instead, you can plan ahead and purchase items that you know you will need later while they're on sale. Maybe your anniversary is in 3 months and you see the perfect gift at a reduced sale price today. Consider buying it if you have the extra income. The savings you can accrue by buying things when they are on sale may make up for having a little less storage space in your closet. Now, when following these steps, there are some important rules to consider. You will negate any savings gains if you use these tips without shopping smart. Here are the rules. When shopping discounts and clearance, be sure to check expiration dates and carefully examine all items for damage. Don't trust the first prices that you see. If you're in the market for something you don't typically purchase, be sure and shop around. When purchasing in bulk, make sure that you will use the item in a timely manner before it expires. And finally, don't be seduced into buying something that you don't need just because it's a great price. Saving $10 on pet shampoo doesn't save you anything if you don't have a dog. Be sure to use these money-saving tips from experts, but most importantly, remember to follow the rules when doing so. Unfortunately, planning is only half the battle. The real challenge is what comes next. The hard part is sticking to your budget and continuing to implement those money-saving strategies. Now we have some life hacks that can help make life a little easier. This will be our focus for this last section. Strategy 1, focus on rewards. This is a combination of mindset and habit. Experts recognize that people respond much better to rewards than punishments when trying to change a behavior. You may find budgeting to be less of a chore if you provide yourself with a short-term incentive for saving. Strategy 2, make it automatic. This strategy focuses on our tendency to avoid things that are too difficult. Like we just spend less if it's more difficult to spend, we'll save less if it's difficult to do so or remember. So make it easy by making it automatic. Take advantage and have a portion of your paycheck deposited directly into savings. Set up retirement contributions to come out directly and utilize automatic bill pay and budgeting services offered through online banking. Strategy 3, create buckets. This one involves creating specific buckets for each of your savings goals. Research shows it's harder to save when you're using your checking account. Hop into online banking and open additional savings accounts or buckets as needed. Then name each account so it's easy to see your progress. And strategy 4, feedback and reminders. Finally, use technology to your advantage. Check out helpful tools like Horizon's app, online banking, and the money management tool to help you track your spending, manage your finances, and pay your bills. You can even set up alerts for things like when a bill is due, when your account drops below a certain balance, and more. The easier it is to budget, the more likely it is that you will stick with it. Be sure to maximize all the tools and strategies available. And remember, Horizon Credit Union is here to help. To summarize what we've learned today, there are a variety of tips, strategies, and tools to help you free up funds and stick to your budget. Pick the ones that work for you and your lifestyle. The most important thing to remember is that budgeting is not a punishment. With motivation and the right attitude, budgeting can put you in control and bring you the reward of financial freedom. And finally, continue your financial journey at the Financial Training Ground on hzcu.org. Explore a variety of topics, including interactive guides at the top link, or create a personalized financial education playlist from the bottom link. Thank you so much for joining us today, and have a terrific rest of your afternoon.